Hey guys, welcome back. We are at the Otter circuit race, and I am back with Chris Riekert.
Hello.
This is Chris Riekert's footage, actually. I had a camera, I was in this race, but I didn't last very long. There's a lot of climbing in this race. It was a very windy day, and those two things don't suit me very well, but Chris, on the other hand, is pretty good at that. So he's going to take you through. We're going to go through a lap here. We're going to talk about the course, and we're just going to talk about general strategy. So, Chris?
Yeah. Thanks for having me back, and glad that we could put it together. Yeah, I think when we're looking at what this race was all about for us, me being on Team Mike's Bikes, if you're used to racing in Northern California, you know that Mike's Bikes tends to put a larger number of riders into every race. We're a local team, and for all of the Northern California stuff, we tend to put out a pretty full squad.
Brian Larson said he's your favorite team in the Bay Area.
Brian Larson has been on the record saying that we're the favorite team of Northern California.
Boiling for hatred for Mike's Bikes. You are the least liked team in NorCal.
Yeah, I mean, we normally have a number of folks out, 5 or 6 at most races, which is great for me when I'm racing with the team.
But today,
it's just me and one other guy. One of my teammates, Dylan Hollinger, who before the race pulled up and let me know that he had about 30 minutes left in his legs. So that really changes the way that we have to race. When you start looking at who else is in the race, we're kind of playing second fiddle here to 2 main teams. Team Illuminate, who is wearing an all-black kit, and then Wildlife Generation, who is right in front of me right here. I think that's Camden that's in front of me. I don't know, there's 2 giants on Wildlife. They're both huge. But both of those 2 teams had about 6 riders in the group, and they're fantastic, like really, really sharp, really smart, young teams, young kids that are really, really talented. So that's kind of where we're at. We're going to talk to you guys about how do you race when you're down on numbers and you're up against big squads.
Yeah, and first let's talk about the course real fast, because we're on a pretty critical feature of the course right now. This is like the second lump of the course. There's a big climb that's featured on this probably 5-kilometer course, something like that.
Yeah, we think I think we looked at it and it was about 5 minutes, something like that. It's a pretty long lap.
And the climb is like 90 seconds of it.
Exactly, yeah. The main feature of the race course is a 2-tiered climb.
We're coming over the top of it right now.
We are. The beginning of the climb is a little less steep, but it's tailwinded, so it's very fast. And then the top part of it, which you just saw us go up, if you're looking at the power numbers, it looks like we were standing still, but we were doing 500 watts as we were going up it. It's very, very steep, and it's kind of the defining feature. The rest of the course, I think you'd typically think that maybe it was going to be a little easier, but it actually does roll a bit.
And the wind plays a big factor today,
and
too.
I was going to say, exactly, down here in Monterey, there's a ton of wind. So you even as you come down that big part of the hill there, you're getting blown really hard across the course. It almost feels like every straight has some sort of new crosswind. I'm not sure if there's a real tailwind or headwind anywhere on the course. It just always feels like it's trying to put you in the sand trap.
Well, there's a real tailwind on the climb, which was real bad news for me. And this is one of the main reasons why you don't see my footage in here, is I lasted about half the race, and there wasn't much strategy to speak of for me. I was in survival mode, and it lasted until Chris and the other strong, talented climber guys wanted to go, and then it was over for most of the field, including myself.
I mean, you really have to on a course like this, you kind of have to figure out where your strengths are going to be, and you have to figure out what to do, and it'll pull out the best of riders. It's pretty hard to do anything there. So right now we're on the front straight.
So you're swinging way left here. What was going on there?
Exactly. I was going to say that right now is when the action's about ready to start to happen. When I'm starting to think about how the tactics are going to play out, I want to make sure that with the main 2 teams, I never let a move or a breakaway go with both teams represented, both Illuminate and Wildlife Generation. If we do that, then there's going to be really, really difficult. It's going to be very difficult to organize a chase. You're going to get a bunch of solo riders like myself and Tim that are trying to figure out how to get it to go. So pay attention, and what you've got right here on the right-hand side is you have an Illuminate rider attacking over the top, and no one covers it. To me as a solo rider, that's actually not too big of a deal, because I know that Wildlife Generation is going to need to close that down at some point. My big concern is that if Wildlife Generation covers that attack and gets up the road, and the 2 of them are then represented, even though there's still
Team California was there.
Yeah. Even though there's still 4,500 meters to go, a long way left in the race. If you get those two riders up the road, that is then going to be my responsibility and the other solo riders' responsibility to pull that back. So big thing here is to make sure that we don't let two riders from the teams go up the road.
It's almost not a bad thing if only one of them goes, because then you're getting towed around.
Exactly. It then becomes Wildlife's responsibility to pull it back. And so, like I said, the big fear was if a rider from Wildlife goes, which he does here on the left, and I understand that that's a big deal and try to move up on the right, but get boxed in here. Now you have to start playing the chess game, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the position that you really don't want to be in. You don't want to be in a position where the two major teams who are going to organize a chase and pull something back are up the road, which is what we have right now, while all of us solo riders are sitting around. Jeff is here on the front. He's soft pedaling. You're thinking the same thing as me.
Well, yeah, I was, yeah, and I'm at the front here, kind of by accident. My plan was to move up and kind of sag over this climb each time, but then those two riders went, and now it's like they're opening this gap, but I am not going to close it because I'm going to get dropped on the climb if I even try.
Yeah, but it is important. Like, positioning yourself in the race is really important because this is going to give you a little more time to respond if something else goes. And so the thing for me, I'm trying to play that, dice rolling game of, who's going to cover this. Up in front of me is Kevin Gherkin here in the kind of confetti colored kit. Will he cover it? Will someone bring that back for me so I don't have to? And luckily enough, Tim McBurney of Team California, who didn't have a lot of other support in the race as well, he decides that gap is now too big and it's too dangerous and he's got to go.
And he's probably waiting for the climb to do that just so he can make everyone else hurt too.
Totally. Tim is like 7'8" or something. He's like some giant unicorn of a man, a ginger that can somehow go up all hills even though he's 180 pounds. Like, it's remarkable. But Tim did take that dig here and put a lot of effort into closing a lot of that gap, and so that was really helpful to get us some of the way across. I'm still surfing. Tim's still going pretty hard. We're doing, whatever we're doing there.
They look like they're 3 seconds up the road, but on this steep climb, that's like 10 seconds up the road.
Exactly. We're in the steep part here, and so you can see the power numbers there.
13
right here,
miles an hour, 700 watts.
Yeah, Kevin Gherkin takes it over, and now Kevin understands the same as I do that we have to get across this gap, and if we don't, we're going to be stuck in a position where Kevin and myself and Tim are going to have to somehow work together. All right, so we're back to racing here in the middle of the race. There's still a fair bit to go, but we just left off on that last clip, and we had built the motivation to bring back the two leaders. There was an Illuminate and a Wildlife rider off the front, and all of us solo riders really understood and realized that we needed to somehow get that back. So now we're in the middle of the race. A selection has been made. Jeff, what are you doing at this time?
I am still in the race, I think, but I've been dropped along with about another 30 people, I want to say, most of the race. And at this point, I am looking for my wife on the sideline to see if I can pull off and watch the finish.
Honey, take my picture.
Hurry up while I'm still in the race.
So we're in a small group here, and like we were calling out in the beginning, it's done exactly what we knew it was going to do. The Illuminate riders are unbelievably strong. The Wildlife riders are unbelievably strong. And sure enough, they make up the lion's share of the group. There are a couple of us solo riders, myself and Tim McBurney, Kevin Gherkin. The three of us, I think, are probably the three main players that are solos. But now, again, we kind of come back to that same game that we were talking about in the beginning. It's how do we make sure that we stay together and don't let a Wildlife away with an Illuminate. For me, I think the tactic comes back to relying on my sprint. I want this to go to the line as it is. In a race like this, while Jeff gave me a wonderful compliment saying that I'm good at hills, I'm less good at hills than someone from Columbia or Cam Piper. So I don't want to have to throw down on the climb with those guys and duke it out on their turf. I want to come to a sprint because I think I'm going to be the fastest when we're on flat ground.
That's how I've won a lot of. I'm less good of a climber, but I've won a lot of races just because I'm not the best climber in the group. I'm usually not the best sprinter in the group. But if it's kind of a rolling terrain and I can get over with the climbers and isolate the climbers with myself, I can beat climbers in a sprint.
Yeah, I mean, and I think everybody that's listening, I mean, that's what you should also be thinking about in every race. I talk to my teammates on Mike's bikes about it all the time. That you need to figure out how to win the bike race. And it's not the strongest, it's who's the smartest and who's actually playing to their skills. For me, at this race, I'm pretty good at getting over hills, and I'm probably a better sprinter than most of the guys in the group. So I want to take it to a sprint. That's how I'm going to win this bike race.
Yeah, you're not going to battle these guys on the climb. You're trying to make it easy over the climb, doing whatever you can to make it easy over the climb. So not having to close down big gaps over the climb, probably a smart idea.
That's super smart.
All right, we have fast forwarded to the last lap, and I wanted to get your take. I want to do the full last lap. I want you to talk about what your thoughts are, Chris, going into the last lap, and then what your approach is here to finishing this race on the top step.
Yeah, right. We've talked about this all the time. I wanted to make sure that we came together as a group, and that was really making sure it was welded together by the two teams, by Wildlife and by Illuminate, so that when we came to the finish, I had the best shot I could take of going for a sprint. I knew that these last couple of laps, as we come into the hill here, I knew they were going to be nuclear hard. And so, like, mentally, like, you kind of prepare yourself through the day. You're like, oh God, there's going to be two of these that are just going to be, you know, you're just going to have to black out for a minute and find yourself on the other side. And I think that happens, of course, but you can't lose sight of good racing and good tactics. And so it's always about, like, finding the best draft. Certainly, like, being behind someone like Camden here from Wildlife, who's a giant, is helpful. It's a better draft. Into this section, we do have quite a bit of a tailwind, but trying to make sure that you're positioned in a place where you're going to get the biggest benefit for you as a rider.
So I would be thinking, like, if you had another Wildlife guy in front of him, I would be worried that this guy was going to drop anchor and let a gap open up, something like that. But your position looks great here. Like, you have the right mix of riders in front of you, and all of these guys are motivated to keep it stitched up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's an Illuminate rider on the front. I think that's Aiden McNeil, a really, really strong junior from Team Swift.
It is, man. He's gifted. That kid's so fast.
Yeah, I feel like every race we go to, it doesn't matter if it's flat or uphill, like, he seems to be there. He's going to be fantastic. Then again, you've got Tim right behind him, and then another Wildlife rider. So yeah, we're represented in a really good way. As we come up to this point in the course, we've actually got a really bad crosswind. So it's left to right. And one thing that I'm paying attention to, and have been paying attention to every single lap, is making sure that, one, I'm not accelerating more than I have to. We're already doing 600 watts, and Camden decides he's going to go a little harder. That doesn't make a ton of sense. But with that left to right crosswind, I'm riding over here on the right-hand side, in the protected zone.
It's still a crazy amount of watts, but, like, they're doing like another 100, 150.
Exactly. You know, Camden, for him to accelerate on that while we were already doing 700, that's his sprint. He can't sprint anymore.
Well,
that
he's
was
probably
his
thinking
bullet.
about his teammate too, right? He wants to keep his teammate protected.
Exactly. And you know, that at this point, that might actually not be the right call, because everybody is having to respond to that effort. You saw me, I kind of let him go and let him move up the hill just because we didn't need to do it. My heart rate was maxed, wattage was maxed. And again, here we go. I'm starting to think about position. I made it over the hill. I'm going to be able to coast down. So
you don't have to follow that.
I was on Cam's wheel. Just let him go, and I'm starting to try to let my heart rate come down. It's already come down 5 beats a minute, and we're not even over the hill.
That's super smart, though, because you just let that gap open up, and then you let these Wildlife guys close that down. You get in their draft. Hey, this is on you to close this down, right?
Totally. And it's not even like closing anything down. It's just like, you know, it isn't necessarily an advantageous thing for Cam to give it a whirl and go for it, even though he does. Cam Piper up at the front of the race realizes he has a little bit of a gap, and since he's not a strong sprinter, Cam's an ex-U.S. time trial champion, so yeah, he's going to send it. He goes as hard as he can here, and that puts the responsibility back onto Wildlife right now.
All right, so now we're just outside of 1K to go. What are you thinking now?
Yeah, like I said, I want this to come to a sprint. Cam has just come back into the group, and now I'm sitting in a really great position. I have 3 Wildlife riders in front of me. I'm sitting on 4th wheel. There's 1K to go. Realistically, this is an ideal position. Wildlife, though, does something pretty goofy here. They let one of their riders roll. They had 3 guys on the front, and they let the front rider go. That tactic is not cool. It's super bush league. It's not what you should be doing at this level of racing. But I close it down instant. You know, anything inside of that last K, you really have to respond to.
You recognize that, like, immediately, though.
Exactly.
Got on it.
I responded right away, and as soon as I got back to the wheel, I started trying to figure out how do I reshuffle in the last 500 meters to give myself a little bit of draft. Kevin Gherkins decides to go. Everybody's snap here is slow, mine included. So Kevin goes, and it allows me to get on to Sam Boardman's wheel, who came on to Kevin. Now in the last corner, we're going to go through one more corner here, a right-hander into the finish chute. I want to make sure that I carry as much speed as possible. So I'm going to rip out to the left right here to try to take a wider line so I can come inside of these guys as we come into the final straight. So here it is. I start to accelerate. I come out wide, and I'm going to duck right back in and come across the wheels and open up the sprint full. Now, from this moment, I thought I had the drive. I thought I had the run on it. Sam Boardman is an incredibly talented rider, but he nips me at the line.
By a bike throw.
By a bike throw. I had mistimed the bike throw, but yeah, that's about all she wrote. It's all about timing, making sure nothing goes up the road, and putting yourself in the best position to win.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris, for showing up again. It was a lot of fun. We should definitely have more of these in the future. And thanks, everyone, for hanging in there. It was a little bit of a longer one. But, hey, let us know if you like this format. And also maybe some subjects for future videos. Click like if you liked it. Subscribe. And look forward to those comments below.
Thanks, guys.